So it's good to be back with you and to be exploring Kentons being Kentons with their enthusiasm for life and for discovering tools and techniques that help us all live better. And I love that we've chosen the topic of meditation for today. And, you were telling me recently that you felt called to begin a more regular practice. And I kind of wanted to hear where you're at with it. How's that
Yeah,
going?
yeah, sure. Um, I think my experience of meditation is kind of a strange one, because when I was a child, everybody else was pretty much grown up, and Leslie was somebody that was meditating, fairly regularly, and I would often join in, being a 4 or 5 year old that was just like, okay, so what are we doing? Okay, we just sit. And we close our eyes and we don't say anything for a bit. Okay, I can do that. So that was it. I had absolutely no idea what the purpose of this thing was, but people seemed to be enjoying it, and I was like, okay, well, this is easy. I just close my eyes and I just like daydream and play with it. And I remember, like, being at boarding school, and I remember somebody asking me, it's like, do you meditate? And I'd be like, well, yeah, I meditate, and it wasn't like a thing of like, it wasn't a regular thing that I was doing every day, but somebody asked me and I was like, yeah, yeah, I meditate. And they were like, wow, that's really cool. Because it was kind of like on the fringe at the time. People were doing it and they were kind of intrigued by the mystery of it. And so I kind of liked the idea that I was like, yeah, I'm one of the cool kids because I meditate, kind of thing. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. So I remember actually when I was about 18, I decided to go, okay, what is this all about? It's not just me sitting, closing my eyes and thinking or daydreaming, whatever I kind of feel like. There must be more to it. And so I remember trying to do it every single day for quite long periods of time, for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and trying to, every time a thought came, just to calm it. And I remember such a um, surprising thing happened, that I ended up almost, it was like virtual reality. I was riding on the back of a dragon going through clouds. And it didn't last very long. It lasted maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds or something like that. And it happened multiple times. And I remember kind of going, okay, now I get it. Now I get it, that there's much more intrigue, much more interest from that quietening the mind, coming back to the breath and just having some level of compassionate control over our thoughts, and to make everything very, very conscious and very present. So that was that was fun.
Yeah. So Aaron, what
Bizarre
what
experience.
what moved you recently to say that you wanted a more regular practice? What was it born out of?
Well, it was very much the fact that the mind chatter
Yeah.
just kept going, and was very, very circular in its working. And I like with muscle memory or playing a sport or anything else, it's I'm not going to be able to control the mind chatter by doing more mind chatter.
Yeah.
There has to be some element of physicality, or at least a practice to bring that back into balance. And so that was the main reason. It was just almost out of necessity
Yeah.
that I felt that I needed something to just be very, very gentle, very kind for myself, to bring me back to a sense of balance.
Yeah. I
And
love
so
that you
that's
say
that's
that.
why I
I
that's why I
think
returned very much
I
to
think
it.
most of us move into some sort of a practice that way because it's just too uncomfortable. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I know for myself, a few years back, I don't know, I had like this download that says until you learn to get still, you're not going to really be able to bring your gifts to the world. And because my greatest fear has always been to die with my potential intact and not used, I was like, okay, whatever it takes, I'm going to get still. So you found an app and you just committed to, like, was it 10 minutes a day or something?
Yeah, I did. And I mean, I tend to really struggle to find any kind of app or any kind of program that resonates. It all feels very strangely artificial somehow.
Mhm.
And so it took me a while to find something that I thought was simple enough that wasn't going to get in my way. Too many of them are, a little bit like social media. It's about just grabbing your attention constantly. And the
Yeah.
whole process of having a meditative app is to not grab your attention.
Well,
So
that's
I did
right. And it's
find
kind of,
something.
it's a bit ironic, isn't it?
It
Because
is
like,
ironic,
one of the
yeah,
things we want is a break from all of the technology, and we use the technology to take a
to
break.
take a break. Yeah, yeah,
And so, which app
yeah.
did you choose?
I found one called Balanced. I'd never heard of it before. Um,
Sounds
I mean,
aspirational.
yes, yeah, yeah, and it's certainly it's a word that runs true to my heart, being an Aries with a Libra ascendant. That balance is the most important thing in my life. So yeah, it's very simple. It doesn't invade my experience. And just kind of guides you and just takes you through some of the very basic principles. So it's very much focusing on the breath to begin with, just being able to feel the warmth of the breath coming in, the coldness going out, and then it moved on to labeling, which when the mind starts coming in, it's like, oh, thinking, or when there's kind of some kind of they were talking about aches and pains through the body, which I wasn't kind of experiencing, but they were suggesting labeling it feeling, or if there's an emotion, strong emotion that comes up, you just label that again, feeling.
Yeah.
So there was something very nice about having a guide track, so to speak, that just prevented the chatter. And the other one was the counting the breaths, so in, out, one, in, out, two. And that I found really, really nice because it was so simple.
Yeah. And was that up
Um,
to 10 and then starting again? Or,
yeah, they did up to five and then they went up to 10.
yeah.
And that was really nice because it was just like tunnel vision. All you were focusing on was the in, the out, and then the number. The in, the out, and then the number. And so I found that one probably the most helpful to just be very clear about what I was intending to do. Yeah.
And have you noticed any benefits so far from your practice?
Yeah, I have. I have. I mean, even if it's only 10 minutes a day that I'm doing, but it's it's very, very, very relaxing. Um, and because of that, when I open my eyes, I'm not thinking. The chatter isn't there. Um, and so I can go about the work or whatever it is that I'm doing during that day. And there is just, there's a shift, there's a change that has occurred. Sometimes the stuff comes back and I'm like, oh, yep, gotta deal with that. But it's because I already have a practice of how to do it, it's easier to apply that later in the day.
Aaron, that's
Um,
fantastic. And I love what you're saying because I think so many people start out and they think that they have to meditate for 20 or 30 minutes. And it's like it's just becomes another stressful thing on their to-do list. And I
yeah.
once heard Eckhart Tolle said, he's a master of just presence and beingness. And he advised a student, he said, you can get more benefit from taking one conscious breath a day than from signing up for a whole year of meditation classes. And I thought that was so merciful.
Mm.
I, like you, when I started to meditate, just chose to do 10 minutes a day, and I've kept it ever since. And the practice has changed a bit. And sometimes I'll listen to a guided meditation, but often I'll just listen to something like music or ocean sounds or the eternal Om sound. That's just kind of like a signal to my brain that this is the time to drop in. And I'm sure for me that there is more to be had from it. Like one of the teachers that I admire, Reverend Michael Beckwith, I notice in his practice that there's just so much joy in it. Like turning within is just this, and that to me feels right. Like if it feels like something that you're just kind of like gritting your teeth and bearing, it's kind of like you're missing the point. Because for me, meditation is about stepping out of the matrix, stepping out of those thought constructs that you, like you talk about, spin round and round and lead us to believe in a certain identity or a certain worldview that is very limited. And when we drop in meditation, there's an opportunity to touch essence and to kind of just connect with beingness. And out of that space, it's like we get to live a whole new life. One of the things Reverend Michael says is, each time you sit as if for the very first time, and there's something kind of magical about that. It's just like to be reborn to the moment and just notice what is, as you land. I would love to for us to kind of share in a way that might encourage other people who might be on the fence around meditation to step into an easy, simple practice to just begin, because I think there's huge benefits for it. And I honestly think to try to live in the world as it's become today without some sort of a stillness practice is just like setting yourself up for disaster. But once we learn to drop in, then as you say, when life comes at you very busy and you feel challenged or triggered, you can just start to notice your breath. You can just do like a mini meditation break. These days there's this new buzzword, which is like exercise snacks, where you do like maybe 10 minutes of exercise or 15 minutes of exercise. But the same with meditation, it could just be a couple of conscious breaths that just bring you home again. And what I want to say to anybody that's considering taking up a meditation practice is, just be gentle, just be merciful, because it isn't easy to get still. And oftentimes, as we begin to get still, stuff rises up to the surface, and it may be uncomfortable emotion, it may be thoughts that you'd rather not be thinking. But the point is to just know that beneath that, there's this river of presence just waiting for you to drop into, and that you can just start to taste it, start to drop in.
Yeah, I would very, very much agree. And there's so much, I think, and certainly for me as well, it's like the there's so much bullshit around around meditation that it's, that you almost can't enter this world because you're not a pro already. And there's a lot of that kind of stigma about, what technique do you use, or how do you do about it? Or, I've spent, 18 months in the Himalayas and, yada, yada, yada. And that's wonderful. I have absolutely no no problem with people that have, done that. That's great. But, it's not to prevent other people from just sitting quietly and just being present with themselves.
Yeah.
And to, even if you're sitting there, spending the entire time thinking or worrying or anything else, that's okay as well. There's
Yeah,
nothing
well
wrong with
said.
that.
Well said,
You
right?
know,
Just show
because
up.
you have
Show
to
up.
show up. And
Yeah.
even if that's the case, and that sometimes is the case, for me, and I'm sure for many other people,
Yeah.
but that there's something even in the process of just doing that with your eyes closed and being very present, that it makes it easier to be able to sometimes with the circular thinking to become clear about, okay, that's probably my next step, or that's my next two steps, or anything else. And so that's
Yeah.
perfect.
And
I
you
also
you
loved what one
sorry.
of the things that they said actually on the app was, to be very, very kind. If you do find yourself drifting into thoughts, remember that that is often your body's way of processing the stress
Mm.
of that particular thought that is being held in the body, or that feeling that is being held in the body. So don't judge it. That is the body's, an unconscious way to be able to process and deal with
Yeah.
that stress.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to make that then, that feeling, or that thought conscious, will help it to shift and will help to reduce the stress within the body. But there's no, I mean, because my story is quite an interesting one, because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing as a kid. I was just joining in. It was fun. So I had no idea. So most of the time I was just sitting there with my eyes closed, thinking, or daydreaming, or
Riding on
whatever it is.
dragons. Yeah.
Yeah, riding on dragons. Um,
Yeah, I've
yeah.
had an interesting path with it, Aaron, because when I was 12 or 11, I think, we got into, there was always the next family adventure. Of course, this was before you were born, but Leslie was writing about transcendental meditation. And so we got into transcendental meditation, and I fell between the child version and the adult version. And I, of course, needed to take the adult version, but I hated the mantra that they gave me, and I really struggled with it, and I didn't keep it up for very long. And over the course of the years, I tried different forms of meditation. Um, as you know, I had a boyfriend that was very into meditation, and he found it very easy. Like he could sit for an hour in meditation and just be completely blissed out. And I was kind of envious of that until I realized that he was happier in that world than he was in just being in the he struggled to be in this world, but he was,
Yeah.
found it very easy. He inspired me. He once went to Vipassana, which is a 10-day meditation retreat where you spend 10 hours a day in silence. No,
Intense.
you're silent for 9 of the 10 days, and then you spend 10 hours a day meditating. And when I saw him, when he came back and he walked through the gate, I was like, wow, I want what he had, because there was just this freedom to him. So I signed up to do it, think a month or so later. And I remember him dropping me off at the airport, and it was like I was going to prison. I was so miserable at the thought of it. And I got there, and I was determined to get through it. But oh my God, like I couldn't imagine something sadder than sitting for 10 hours a day on a meditation cushion and not talking to anyone. You know me, I love to talk. And it was a good experience. It was uncomfortable, and there was, guidance. And between you and me, I wouldn't do it again. I don't need to repeat it. But there were moments of real deepening. I had a sort of an experience that was quite dramatic of I don't know, awakening or being filled with light. And when I went to, I think I may have told you this story, but when I went to the teacher because I was in great pain, did I tell you this story?
No.
So it was the 6th day, and we sat down, and at this point in the process, you have to sit with what they call serious intent, which means that you actually do not move for the whole hour. You sort of divide it up into hourly sections. So as I sat down to do this hour of serious intent, all of a sudden my right knee just started to hurt so badly. And I was like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to sit here for an hour. I'm just like in agony. And then something inside me said, even if I permanently damage my knee by sitting here for the hour, even if they have to take me out on a stretcher, even if I have to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, I am going to sit here and not move for the next hour. And as soon as I, very Kenton-esque, as soon as I said that, my whole body just filled up with light, and the pain was completely gone. And there was just like this utter bliss and sort of energy. I was like, what on earth is this? Like I've been plugged into like the universal light source or something. And I sat just for the rest of the hour, just in heaven. And I went to the teacher. You were allowed to speak to the teacher if you had any questions. And of course, I went to him. I was like, oh my God, you can't believe what just happened to me. And blah, blah, blah. And he was like, yes, just return to the breath. Return to scanning the breath. And I thought to me, and of course he was right in a way, because as soon as you get attached to a phenomenon that happens in meditation, it's like you crave it and you want it back again. And it's
Yeah.
really not the point of meditation. And like the fact that happened to me was lovely. And I was grateful not to be carried out in a stretcher and have pain for the rest of my life in my knee. But but nevertheless, there's something about celebrating
The
experience as a
moment.
human
Yeah.
being that kind of didn't seem to be being acknowledged.
Yeah, I have to
No,
say that I would agree with that because I mean the experience that I had of it really was like virtual reality of riding the dragon. When I was meditating after that and I couldn't get back to that point, it became frustrating to the point where I
yeah,
stopped meditating. So
that's
yeah,
right. We
yeah,
have to keep letting it go. And your dragon experience sounds very shamanic, or even lucid dreaming or whatever. And those are all beautiful things too. Um, one of the things that I say to people that want to get into meditation and just can't get still. I remember when I had made my commitment to 10 minutes a day, and literally I would sit down with my cup of coffee in my hand and I'd be meditating while like white knuckling my like whatever it took. Or I had, I always have this thing about like the accoutrement. So I had to like light the incense, have the perfect crystal in my hand, set it up or whatever. So all of those things can create an environment that's helpful. But I think for some people, just sitting still is just not the way to meditate. And if that's the case, then by all means do something different. Like
Mm.
one of the things I did years ago when I did Byron Katie's school is she teaches a walking meditation, and I still do it to this day at times. And it was so simple, but basically you go out for a morning walk. And I think we would go out for maybe 20 minutes. And as you walk, you just notice what's around you and you name it. Almost as if you're like seeing it for the first time. You give it a name, and what she says is you give it a first generation name. So you see a tree and you don't say, oh, that's a magnolia tree. You just say tree. And then you walk a bit more and you say dog. And then you say path or whatever arises. And when I was doing this at the 9-day school that she teaches in Arizona, one morning I came across something. It was these little animals that I'd never seen before in my life. And I was like, whoa, what do I call these? I have no idea what they are. They're so adorable. And so I can't even remember what I labeled them, but afterwards, I told people that I'd seen them and the little baby ones and the bigger ones, and apparently it's something called a javelina, which exists in some parts of the States. I'd
Mm.
never heard of it. It's kind of like a wild pig, but apparently they're
Mm.
really dangerous and they can attack you. And because I didn't know, because there was no story attached, I was just a bit like you flying dragons. I was just like, wow, what is this? Just discovering the world for the first time. But anyway, that in itself can be a meditation, or walking and doing breath counting with each pace that you take could be a meditation. So it doesn't matter. All we need is some way of focusing the mind to take it away from the incessant monkey mind chatter.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
the problem solving mind to just make it very simple. I think that's the beauty of it. Tree, desk, lamp,
Yeah.
it just means that there's no attempt at the what is often referred to as the small mind, which is the kind of problem solving mind. So it's not having to solve anything, it's
Mm.
just making it very simple. Counting the breaths, labeling things. Yeah.
What
What?
if anything will be your next step, do you think, in your practice? Do you feel moved?
I don't know for the moment. I mean, I think it's still too early.
Mm.
I mean, I was part of a meditation, group that we, had here for many, many years. And that was 20 minutes, where there was a discussion to begin with, meditation, and the kind of a discussion afterwards. There's something that was very lovely about doing that. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of return to it because I no longer have that weekly ritual.
Mm.
But for the moment, I just want to see where this goes. Just keep it very simple. 10,
Wonderful.
10, 10 minutes a day, and see if there's something that then comes where I'm like, okay, I want to try to take this further, or I don't. I just want to keep it exactly the way that it is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
lovely. I think 10 minutes is very doable. At least it feels that way for me. And what I've noticed recently is, I'm in love with the breathwork thing at the moment. And so I'll start with breathwork and then I'll do my 10 minutes. And oftentimes my 10 minutes I might lead into it with some prayer, or I might lead out of it with some prayer, but it's just that time that is devoted to connection, really connecting to the deeper truth or the deeper self. Um, and then, yeah, just kind of setting up the day. I like to do it in the morning. And I know that there are people that practice morning and evening. And I think there's something to be said for an evening practice too, but it might have a different flavor. Like to do a gratitude practice and reflect back on the day of kind of highlights of what your brags are, what you're proud of yourself for, or what you're grateful for.
Yeah, that's a lovely one actually. I hadn't considered the evening, but yeah, that would be very helpful to make the day conscious, to make the what has happened through the day, more aware. Because my difficulty very much is that it just sometimes feels like a dream. It's
Yeah.
just one day that molds into another, into another, into another, and it's not a nice feeling. It'd be very nice to make it, oh, that's right, I did this, I did that today, and
Yeah.
that I like the way that made me feel. I mean, that's in many cases why people, will have a diary or a journal. And I've certainly, done enough of that through the years. But I like the idea of just having an evening practice. That's lovely. Mm.
Yeah. I think that one of the values of a meditation practice is that you get to live more intentionally. So
Mm,
instead of the day just happening at you, it's like your day is born out of your own personal connection and intent. And so if, because I asked you the question of where to next, and I think one of the things I don't like to shove myself around where meditation's concerned, because I already consider it pretty impressive that I've been able to sit through, 10 minutes a day for however many years it's been. But I think, yeah, what I notice is like the day begins and then there will be a pull to check email or see if a client in Europe needs something from me or whatever. And it's like when you pull back from that and you say nothing matters more than this and you start with stillness, the day has a different flavor to it.
mm.
So do you have any, before we hop off the call, do you have any words of advice to somebody who maybe thinks that they're a bad meditator and would kind of like to explore the benefits of meditation for de-stressing and feeling more connected? What would you say to them?
Oof, I don't know. I think because it's come back to me in a very short period of time. So
Mm.
I feel very much at that stage myself. Um,
Well, maybe just to always be a beginner, huh? And
yeah,
just
I mean,
dip your toe
I
in.
mean that that's the sense of childlike enthusiasm, with anything is so important, and the judgment is just so heavy.
Oof.
The idea that I've seen people like, oh, I must meditate, and it's like it creates more stress
Yeah.
thinking about the fact that they haven't done it or they need to do it, or it's a bizarre world that we have kind of started to create with the stress, day-to-day stresses of modern life. And then the idea that the exercise and the meditation fall into the stress category rather than the replenish and relax category.
Yeah.
um, and it's an unusual mentality that it's quite addictive, I think. I think that's why people get into it. They get addicted to this idea of the being constantly in this stressful mode, and that even these
Mm.
practices that are supposed to balance stress somehow can induce more stress. And it's bizarre. So yeah, I would just say, really be kind. Give yourself a break. If you sit there with your eyes closed for 10 minutes and, do nothing but think about, some conflict or, some idea, or, just letting your mind go wild, that's
It's a
absolutely
good
fine.
place to
Let let
begin.
it
Yeah.
let it be.
Just
It's
begin,
great.
right? Just
The,
do
the
it.
fact the fact that you're sitting quietly and your eyes are closed, or even if your eyes are open and you're just concentrating on your breath while you're thinking, wild and crazy thoughts, it's
Yeah.
also fine. Just let it be.
That's
I mean,
very, very good advice, Erin. And always to know that the mind will kick in and say, that's not good enough. You should be doing it better, longer, different, whatever. It's like, thanks, mind. And just this is how I'm doing it today. And then to honor yourself and call it good and be proud of yourself for just even entertaining the possibility of creating more presence, more stillness in the life. I think it is one of those kind of pillars that can really help us live better lives in a time that is pretty hectic. Should we wrap it up there?
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Well, I look forward to our next conversation. I'm not sure what the subject will be, but yeah, I wish you good continuation with your meditation and we'll continue to compare notes.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, see you soon.
Bye.